What's up guys? Path of Exile's new league, the Keepers of the Flame, has been out for just over a week now, and I've been playing a ton of it, and I thought while it's all still fresh, it would be a good time to talk about PoE 2. So the way they're doing this now is every 2 months they will release a new league to either PoE 1 or PoE 2, alternating each time. So that means we're around 6 or 7 weeks away from the new league in PoE 2, which will bring a new class, some new quality of life features, and some new endgame league mechanic. And they've already said in a recent interview for the last league that the patches coming in early access will all be content from PoE 1, not new stuff. So it'll likely be stuff from PoE 1 reimagined into 2, and then when it has its full release, we'll get all new content purely for PoE 2. So I thought it'd be a good time to talk about some of the best things I think they could bring from 1 into 2, and these are all just my opinions. So I would love to know what you think down below. Are you do you really dislike PoE 1 and you want it to be as far from that as possible? Are there certain things that you love in 1 that you'd love to see in 2? Or is there a certain endgame mechanic you're holding out for because you really want to farm it in PoE 2? Well, let's get into it. I'll give my thoughts and let me know what you think down below. So number one, the number one thing that I think needs changing in PoE 2 that hopefully is unbiased and is something that will generally make the game better is the trials, in how we ascend, how we gain our ascendancy points. So if you haven't played in a while, there are 2 ways to ascend in PoE 2. There is the 2 trials, the trial of Sekima and the Chaos trial. And basically what you have to do is you have to do this multiple times as you progress to get your different ascendancy points. The main problem with this is it is pure RNG, and certain classes are much better at it than others. So much so that there are like specific classes that farm this at endgame. Now, the reason why I think this needs changing is because a lot of people just don't like it. And I think when you have a mechanic that is so disliked and so RNG, a lot of people don't like roguelikes. A lot of people don't like roguelike mechanics. They don't like these punishing things where you can progress for 20 minutes and fail, lose everything, and have to start again. I personally love it. I personally love that challenge, and I love roguelikes, and I love the Trial of Sekima. In fact, the Trial of Sekima is probably the thing I've spent the most time doing in the game at endgame. I love it at endgame, where you push your character as far as possible and you try and min-max the content to get the best rewards, to get the gems, to get the jewels, to get the the special drops from the unique relics that you can use, stuff like that. I really like that side of the trials, and I think it works really well as an endgame mechanic when you don't want to do maps. However, I think it's terrible as an ascendancy because you're making players, when they are at their worst, when they are their weakest, they may have had bad drops while leveling, their class might be a little bit funky, they might not be following a build guide and might be generally just struggling through the campaign, and then pushing in them into, a roguelike, hard, challenging mechanic where if you fail it once, you lose everything and go back to the start. And I don't think that's the best way to deal with it during the campaign and during leveling. In PoE 1, what they have is they have the Ascendant Trials. And these are basically, as you go through the game, in certain areas of the campaign, you will get these little trials where you have to like avoid some traps or find, solve a puzzle. And then you'll get these circles, these checks against your ascendancy. When you complete them all, you go to an Ascendancy Trial, which is really, really easy. It's more laid out, and you can just get it done. I don't think I've ever, on any character I've ever played in PoE 1, I don't think I've had a frustration of not being able to do my Ascendancy Trial. And if I fail it, maybe I just wait 3 to 5 levels and I go back and do it. And like I say, I've never really struggled, maybe on the last Ascendancy on certain builds, but it's a much easier and predictable experience of as soon as you go to do it, you have a good feeling of if you can do the maps or if you can do the content you're currently in, you can probably do the Ascendancy Trial because there's no crazy modifiers working against you. And I think that's something they should bring in to PoE 2. I think the Trials of Sekima and the Trials of Chaos should stay in as some like endgame farmable thing, but then there should just be something simpler or easier, or at least, more methodical, something that you know what you're getting, how to, if you're strong enough to do it. There should be a boss there that challenges you and you will have to beat it to get your reward. The path to it shouldn't be so punishing to new players or players who are learning a new class. Okay, number 2, the next thing I think would work really well in PoE 2 is more non-mapping endgame content. So what do I mean by that is stuff where you can grind and play and farm. You can level, you can earn gear, you can earn rewards, you can progress your character without doing the end game mapping. I personally really like stuff that isn't on the Atlas. Maps are fun, the Atlas is fun, but every now and again it's nice to do something different. And in PoE 2, that means you're either doing the Trial of Sekima, or you're doing the end game bosses on repeat. You're running breachstones on repeat all day long. That's pretty much all you have, outside of some other little things. Whereas in PoE one, they have lots of different things, and I'm going to try and show you here. It's not going to make much sense unless you've played the game, but you can see down this right side is all of the content not on maps. So for example, you have the new one here, this monastery where you can go and do these breach things and create gear. That's some new thing. You have the rogue harbor. What this is it's basically a place where you go, and I'll just go show you. You have this place here called the Rogue Harbor, and what this is you have a team, like a network of rogues, and you can go talk to them, you can gear them up, and they all have their own unique gear, they all have their own skills. This guy's an engineer and he can detrap things. This person has perception, and they can all like do different things when you go and do heists. And you can have a bunch of heists, these drop in maps, and you get them in other ways, and they have like the stats like maps, and they have loot, and you go in, you work your way through these different things, and you are basically heisting like these places to go and take stuff. And you have a team of people that will go in there, and you're breaking chests, you're disarming traps, and just a really cool end game set around this mechanic. And it's sort of thing like they add it for League, and then it becomes a permanent end game feature, and you can live here. You can just do this for your end game for a long period of time. The next things we have is King's March, and we got a glimpse of this in Act 4, but this is basically a city you can fully build, and I'll show you this as well. This is a full city you can build, and you can manage it in the first game. So you can come along here, and you can go here, and you can like hire workers, and you can hire all these guys mine, these guys are farmers, this guy can like smelt stuff for you, you can manage your town, and you can have them grow different crops, and you can go out and you can send ships and stuff like that. There's just lots of stuff to do outside of the map, and there's loads of other stuff. There's the delves. I personally love the delves, where you go down this like forever long mine that just keeps going and going and going with really hard content, and you can find like bosses down there, you can find rare loot down there, and there is specific items down there that crafters need, so you always have things you can sell. So yeah, there's just lots of end game stuff just not tied to mapping, and I know people who will just delve for a whole league. They just love it, and I've spent a league where pretty much all I did was delve and just go down these mines. So I think that would work really well if they started bringing some non-map content for people that just want a break from maps. Okay, number 3 is a small thing, but it's something to do with crafting. I feel like right now with crafting in PoE 2, they've come a very, very long way, and I think the Abyssal League was an incredible step forward in the right direction. I think crafting right now in PoE 2 is in a really, really good place. However, I think there's a significant barrier between the players that understand it and can use it to craft all the gear they want, and the players who don't quite understand it. And I think that is a small thing that can be alleviated with something in PoE 1. In PoE 1, you have this thing here called the crafting bench. Now, all this is it allows you to put a single modifier on any item you want. And as long as you have a free suffix or a free prefix, you can put any modifier on any item. You don't need to understand crafting. You don't need to understand crafting bases. You don't need to understand modifier tiers. You don't need to understand anything how crafting works at all in PoE 1, but you can use the crafting bench. And like I say, I'll show you. All you do is you say, okay, this ring, I want to put it in here. And if it had, this one right now has a free prefix, so I can put any prefix on. If I wanted to add fire damage, I wanted to increase mana, if I wanted to add lightning damage, things like that, I can just throw it on effortlessly. And every single piece of gear has this light blue thing at the bottom, which means it has something from the crafting bench. So you can pretty much always craft a little bit of something. Maybe you need some extra lightning resistance. Maybe you need, some more intelligence to make your build work. You can just throw it on any piece of gear, on any item you want, effortlessly. And the best thing about this is, as you progress through the game, you unlock these recipes. So as you clear different maps, there's loads and loads of maps in PoE 1, and every time you complete a map, you will get a new recipe. And you can see, for example, that they go up in ranks as well. And all these recipes come from different locations. So just play through the game, and just before you get to your boss fight, there'll be a recipe like right on the boss room pretty much of every single fight in the game. And you just keep collecting them, and then your crafting bench just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you can just make small tweaks to your gear. You can just pick a piece of gear, make a small tweak, and it will just carry you through with no knowledge. I think that would be incredible in PoE 2. Okay, so the fourth thing I want to talk about is endgame juicing, and how I don't want to hate on PoE 2's endgame because it's clearly still in development. The recent change they made in PoE 2 to scrap towers completely shows that it's not where they want it, and they are still changing things. So I'm not gonna say it's bad, but I personally don't like the mapping. My opinion. However, here's a glimpse into why it doesn't feel that good when you compare it to PoE 1. So with the new system right now in PoE 2, if you want to go and run, say you want to go run 10 maps in a row, your character's strong enough, and you want to go run 10 endgame maps in a row, you would get 10 maps. By looking them on the map, you would find them on the map that you want to run, and then you would need precursors to load in, right? You would now have to put 3 precursors in per map and run it that way. And the modifiers you'd be looking for are going to be pretty much quantity, rarity, and hope for the best. And then you're going to be aligning that with, ritual precursors or breach precursors. And it's pretty straightforward. And there's not much diversion away from one strategy to the next. However, in PoE 1, let me show you how you would set up a strategy of what you want to juice. First, you have your Atlas tree, which is, in my opinion, much more involved. This is the Atlas tree, and you can set it up to have different things. So mine's set up to like strong boxes, shrines, more scarab drops, and then more delves, because I'm trying to run a few delves right now. So it's kind of just, my map will now have those 3 things in at all times, rather than that, the separate little circles that you have in PoE 2. So you can kind of set this up however you want, and then your maps will all look how you want them to look, and they will have the mechanics in them you want them to have in you. You can even like exclude certain mechanics here. So you can say, I don't want it to have any blights. I don't want it to have any rituals. They will just never appear, which is just much easier. And then when you're running your maps, you can do this thing here. You can use scarabs. So if we just search here for scarab, you load scarabs into your map device, similar to how you put your precursors in, and it will add things to the map. So let's say you're running, what's going to be the easiest to compare to? Abyss. Say you're running Abyss, because that's now in PoE 2. You have this, area has an additional abyss. You can just load a bunch of those in, have more abysses. You can run abysses in areas spawn 50% increased monsters. You can have this one, monsters from the abysses in areas of increased difficulty and reward for each prior pit in that abyss. And you're going to recognize certain things from here in PoE 2, but they are kind of hard to hit, or you have to do certain things with your map to hit them. In this, you can just buy 10 of these and then throw them in your map device, and for your next 10 maps, they will all have these effects. And you can have like the further you progress the end game, you have more slots to put more scarabs in. And eventually you can put like, 4 or 5 scarabs in at a time and have these really juiced map runs. But more choice and more variety is always a good thing. That's my opinion. And I think talking about PoE 2 compared to 1, Endgame does bring out a lot of people who say, if you want PoE 1, just play PoE 1. So I'm curious what you guys think of that one. Let me know down below. Okay, now the final thing is tiny. It's a very, very small thing, but I think it's very impactful. And it's something lots of people have complained about, and they have addressed it, but I don't think it quite works just yet. And that's movement speed. So movement speed right now in PoE 2, they've added sprinting, and sprinting lets you do a little, you roll and you run. However, if you get hit by a monster, you'll fall over and probably wipe, right? However, in PoE 1, you just have more movement speed available early from gear, and you have movement speed abilities. Pretty much every single build will run a multitude of movement speed abilities early on. Literally, Act 1, you get a flask, which gives you like 40% movement speed that you can just use on cooldown. That's 40% movement speed on top of your boots, just constantly, and you're just constantly pressing that button every single chance you get. Then you have a movement speed ability, like you have the blinks, you have like, I've got one right now, like Frost Blink. You have the flame dash, you've got like Blink Arrow, you've got the charges, you've got loads of ways to just get through the maps, which means like, even though PoE 1 has 10 acts, you've got 5 acts in Act Part 1, and then 5 acts in Act 2, it feels so fast. Like I've leveled 2 characters to like 90 plus already, and it doesn't feel like a chore going through that campaign, because you can just blitz through. The maps are fairly big, but you can just fly through them. Movement speed and movement abilities together let you just fly through the map. As long as you're strong enough to beat the monsters, you can just get from the start to the end and just go through the campaign really, really, really fast. I think that would do so good in PoE 2, and that is why you see a lot of like the meta endgame is running like some crazy movement speed build, or it's using the rower, because it's just such a big advantage in a game which for some reason limits your movement speed. So yeah, I think there's a lot they could do to really smooth that out, especially while leveling. I think it's very, very important while leveling, but that's just my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Again, just 5 things I would love to see personally. I think it's while PoE 1's fresh in our minds, let's talk about it. And this is no hate on PoE 2. I absolutely love PoE 2, and it's a game in early access, so it's not finished, and it is just going to keep getting better. And the more we give feedback, the more we talk about changes that we'd like to see, and the more we criticize when necessary and praise when necessary, the more the game is going to improve. And I think it's improving in a good direction already. So let's try and help it along. But thank you for watching. Love to hear what you think on this one. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.